How are we already to the end of Season 2? So many of you have identified with the storytellers this season, which is a huge part of why this platform exists. I hope you've been challenged to gather stories of those around you, and perhaps you've shared more pieces of your own. In today's episode, you'll meet Kim Steelman. She and I were strangers before this interview, connected through a friend. We met in a little library room, exchanged awkward hellos, and simply began. Now, maybe that sounds terrifying to you, like I could never talk to a stranger like that. I'll be upfront with you, I always worry that people will feel uncomfortable if I ask about their story, that it will seem like prying. But here's the deal, we're all eager to be heard, to be listened to. When we find someone who truly cares to know more, it's like a big sigh of relief and the conversation flows. I don't need to ask just the right question so much as offer my time and a listening ear. Less overthinking it, more showing up. And honestly, if I'm accused of prying, at least they know I cared about them enough to ask. Back to Kim. As should be no surprise, her story blew me away. Kim is sweet, honest, beautiful, and gentle. You'd never peg her with a past of alcohol and drug abuse, depression, and suicide attempts. But that's the thing about stigmas. No matter what we think we know, there's always more to the story. Listen in.
I was born in the St. Louis area. And then my parents divorced, I don't remember. I was like 3 months old maybe. I don't know. And then we moved a lot when I was a kid. My mom was in a lot of relationships, which caused us to bounce around a lot. By the time I got to Salem, which is where I live now, I had lived in like 10 different houses or something, or maybe had 10 different father figures at that point. Honestly, I can't keep track. It was so much. Yeah. Before I came to Salem, the longest I'd ever been anywhere was 2 school years. That was the most stability I'd ever known. Wow. So we moved to Salem when I was 11. She got married to somebody in Salem. Started school here, and he had made a promise that, like, you guys are going to graduate here. And my brother so he's 3 years older, so he was 14 at the time. He was, like, going into high school. Me and my brother at that point were like, okay. It actually worked out. And we did. We stayed. And when I was 13, I began dating he's my ex-husband now, but
13.
Yeah, 13.
Wow.
We dated all through junior high and high school and got married. I got married 2 weeks before I turned 18, which I look back now and I'm like, what on earth? Why did my parents ever sign that paper? Which he's a great guy, but yeah, we got married and bought a house and had 2 beautiful kids, my daughter Delilah and my son Ledger. Yeah.
Cool names.
Thanks. Did the whole American Dream thing. I worked at a bank for a little bit, and then I got this amazing job as a wellness coordinator for a small nonprofit in Salem. So my way of rebelling against my parents for my tumultuous childhood was to be incredibly responsible. And that sounds weird to people when I say that.
Like, I'm going to do it right.
Exactly. And that's a big reason I got married so young. We bought a house right out the gate. I never asked my parents for any assistance or help, and they were poor. They couldn't have helped me anyways. But I'd grown up in such a rocky household, and just our life was so unstable all the time. And I felt like everybody, like my family, was just expecting us to follow in that path, because that's what happens so often is people just follow after their parents. And I was just bound and determined that I was not going to do that. So I married the only person I ever dated. Yeah, I definitely was a go-getter. I wanted to do everything myself and prove everybody wrong. So I knew then part of the reason that I was getting married was because I felt like I wasn't going to be my mom. Mm-hmm. So when we were together for 4 years before we had gotten married, we had had sex before we were married. So I felt like I'm gonna marry him because I'm not gonna have been with a bunch of people like my mom, and I'm not doing it. And at the time, I thought, no big deal because I love him anyways, and this is gonna work out great. Yeah. So, but you live and you learn, and you realize as you get older that love is not the only thing that a marriage or a relationship needs to succeed. I definitely went through like a crisis. I don't know if you'd call it like a quarter life crisis or just, it was 2015, I would say, is when it really started. So my son was born in 2014, and I really believe I had undiagnosed postpartum depression. I went back to work after 3 weeks of having him because we couldn't afford for me to take off any longer, and my work didn't have any paid maternity leave. And I think that has a big part to do with the spiral of depression. And it really caught up with me maybe 6 to 8 months after he was born. And I wouldn't say my ex-husband and I ever had like a honeymoon phase like you hear people talk about. We were more like brother and sister than anything. And I know that sounds weird.
But you grew up together.
Exactly. When you grow up with somebody, you learn their buttons just like you do your siblings. And when you start a relationship so immature, it's hard to become more mature in that relationship. Like we were becoming more mature outside of our relationship, but we never really gained that maturity inside because it was just all we knew. So yeah, we were more like siblings than anything because we just got on each other's nerves all the time. Yeah. Probably the beginning of 2015 was like super serious, like, hey, we need to work on our marriage. Something's wrong. This is not how it's supposed to be. And at the time, he was like, we're fine. He grew up in a house where his parents weren't necessarily happy, but they stayed together because they were married, and you just don't get divorced. So that's what he was raised in. I was raised in the complete opposite, where my mom ran away anytime anything happened. Right. So I was trying to figure out what is this? What is right? Like, exactly. Neither of us knew. I started drinking a lot. I started going out. Like, not that it's wrong to go out with your friends, but it was like I was definitely like absent from my family more. I started throwing myself into work, drowning myself in anything that I could to like escape my distract yourself almost. Yeah, we had a big falling out the summer of 2015. Decided we were going to try to work on it. We did. And then May of 2016, we decided to separate. We switched custody with kids. Like we acted like we were divorced. It was like a trial divorce basically, which was really, really emotionally devastating for him. It was for me too, but I had become super dependent at that time on alcohol. I was drunk every night. Like I drank at least a bottle to 2 bottles of wine a night. Yeah, I mean, I still maintained my job and everything. And at this point in time, I had also gotten elected to city council. Oh, wow. So, yes. Yeah, I was too drunk and to be too miserable because anytime I'd start to feel miserable, I'd just drink some more to numb the feelings. I got on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medicine, started abusing those. It was a really, really, really dark period of my life. I often say I don't know how I made it out of 2016 alive, and I say that with complete seriousness because I was extremely suicidal. I struggled with self-harm, which was something that I had struggled with when I was a teenager, but you don't think about adults struggling with that. You think of that as like an angsty teen thing, right? For sure. But it was like, in my mind, it was like the only pain that I could control. Like I said, when I'd start to really feel stuff, I'd just drink more and more and more, but you get to a point where you still can feel things through that. And so I tried to find some sort of escape from that. I could not handle parenting. My ex-husband, thank goodness, he's a great dad. He would drop the kids off to me, and sometimes I wouldn't make it a whole day, and I would call him and be like, I can't do it. Like, you're going to have to come get him. I don't know how many times I had come seconds away from ending my life in that year. I really don't know how many times. And I think back to that now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I can't imagine, because I have an incredible life. I would have missed out on all of this.
Yeah.
But people, especially people who've never experienced depression for themselves, do not understand, like, the darkness that you're in when you're in those moments. Like, you can't see the light. You can't see reality. You can't see, I had 2 beautiful kids in front of me. Like, most people who've never experienced depression would be like, how can you look at your kids and want to end your life, But to me, in the mind of somebody who is that deep into depression and substance abuse, you genuinely think, like, the world would be a better place without me. Like, I would be doing them a favor. It wasn't that I wanted to die. It was just that, like, living was so painful. So hard. But I had some good friends who stuck by me. One of them was super supportive and was, like, just there for me all the time and wouldn't really say much about what I was doing. I just knew she'd always be there. Then the other one was not afraid to call me out on my crap, which was really important too. I hated it at the time. I was like, you don't know anything about what's going on. But, like, she saw the self-destructive behaviors that I was doing. I look back on that now, and I'm so thankful for that person, because she prayed for me in those hard times. She prayed with me in those hard times. And she wasn't being judgmental. And that's what she was like, I'm not going to sit here and watch you do all these things that are terrible for your life, and you're throwing all of this away. And I'm not going to just sit here and just watch you do it, The thing is, when you're dealing with somebody, especially who's, like, abusing or addicted, like, you don't want to trigger things, but you also don't want to enable them and make them think it's okay either. Yeah. One of my, the people that I was closest to in that time is now my husband. And our relationship definitely did not start off on good terms by any means. And I look back now and I wish we could have done things differently and started things differently, for sure. But anyways, he was going through a similar situation at the time. We were kind of 2 big train wrecks leaning on each other. And when you look back and you do have a clear mind and, like, you're not influenced by alcohol or drugs or whatever, and you look back on the things you did and you're just like, oh my gosh. Yeah. The person that I was in that time period is a completely unrecognizable to the person that I am now. Yeah. And I'm thankful for those experiences, because they have made me I am so much less judgmental now, which I never even considered myself judgmental before. But see, I had always stayed on the straight and narrow my whole life until that point in time. I think the thing with when you go through really hard times in your life and you go through struggles, the most important thing is that when you get out of that, you use that experience to help other people that are also going through similar things. And that's been, for me, made it all worth it. I remember having that conversation with God, like, okay, I've ran so far away, like, I've tried to do this on my own, I've tried to deal with it in my own ways, and I have failed miserably. And it was like, I just had to drop the chains of it, and I just, I had to give it up, and I knew, like, I had to change, or else I was going to die, because I was drinking too much and taking prescription medication. So I was either going to die that way on accident, or I was going to die by suicide if I didn't get my stuff together. And that was just the reality, and I knew it. And I didn't want that. That's not something you want. Even people who are suicidal, they don't want to commit suicide. It's just, you feel like you don't have another option. Yeah. Kind of surrendering it. And it was not an overnight thing. And I think that's something that people need to realize about recovery, whether that's from substances or just recovering from depression, or it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's something that you literally have to work on every single day, every moment of the day. And it's hard. It's so much harder to deal with your emotions than to just like let them swallow you. I was still drinking, but not every day. It was like, it began maybe every other day. I threw my medication away, which I'm not advocating for that. I think if you need medication, you should have medication. At that time, it was safer for me to throw it away than to have it there and trust myself to use it responsibly, because I knew I couldn't. Yeah. It started every other day. Then it became like on the weekends, and then it became every once in a while.
I did go to counseling. Okay. And I think October is when I started counseling.
I remember sitting on my couch by myself because my kids were at their dad's house for New Year's Eve in 2016.
I was sitting on my couch and I thought, okay, this is the last day of this year. And this is the worst year of my life. There's no denying that. But I'm never doing this again. And tomorrow is a new day and a new year, and I am going to be like, we're never going down this road again. Yeah. And I haven't. I remember waking up on New Year's Day in 2017 and just like feeling like so much weight had been lifted off of me, because that year was just behind me, and I got through it and I didn't die. Like, that was the amazing part to me, that I really actually made it out alive. And now I am married to my best friend who helped me out of all that. And by the grace of God, we're both so much better and in such a better place, and have a daughter on the way, and she's due in just a couple months. And like I said, I look back on that time and I think, oh my gosh, what if I would have ended it? Like, I would have, I never dreamed that life could be this good. Like this beautiful and like so much joy. And I don't have a lot. Like, we don't live in like a fancy house, but we're so grateful. And both of us, because both of us have been at just the bottom. Both of us are so grateful for every little thing that we have. We value time and family so much more now. So I am grateful for those times, but it's so painful to look back on and think I hurt a lot of people in that time. A lot. I hurt my family really bad. I hurt, my ex-husband really bad. Hurt my kids. And that's not easy to deal with. But I'm forgiven for those things, because I might not be forgiven from those things by people all the time. There's plenty of people who don't forgive me for things that I did in that time, and that's okay. I don't, I can't blame them. That's not their responsibility. But I can have peace because, one, I've forgiven myself, and two, I know that I've been forgiven by God. And for me, that's just the ultimate peace. Christians they rightfully so get a really bad rap for acting perfect all the time and acting like they have it all together and being judgmental and everything. And the truth is, like, I struggled with things just like anybody else does, and I fell into depression and all those things that I talked about. Just because God does not mean that you're actively pursuing him all the time. And I was definitely not. I was actively trying to run away from God and any convictions that I possibly had. Because I didn't want to think about it. I just wanted to do my own thing. But I will say that being in the depths like that, there's probably, I don't know, you can't get much closer to God than when you are at the bottom like that and you finally like just let go of it and you're like, okay, like I'm done. Like I said, I dropped those chains, and at that point there was like nothing in between us, because I just surrendered it all, because I felt like I had nothing of value anyways. I just was like, throw it all aside and give it to God. But my relationship with God has become
million times stronger than it's ever been in my entire life since then. So again, another thing that I'm grateful for that experience for. And I do feel like he uses me to help other people get through those hard times and situations because, and I don't care if you're Christian or not, like I would obviously help anybody that I saw that I felt like I could. But I think God uses the broken pieces of our lives to help other people. That's definitely what he's done for me and my husband.
Someone wiser than myself recently told me, efficiency at the cost of relationship is never worth it. It's not enough to stick that on my Pinterest board. My actions should follow suit. As we wrap up season 2, I want to be frank with you. Choosing face-to-face connection doesn't come easily. If we're going for efficiency, it's certainly not the way to go. Prioritizing people over schedules will always require sacrifice. Some days I'm weighed down by life and just don't feel like putting forth the extra effort. I don't feel like genuinely interacting with my cashier, connecting with my coworkers, or pausing to engage with my neighbor. On days like those, it's tempting to give myself a pass, thinking they won't know the difference anyway when everyone else is just as disengaged. And that's true. They won't know the difference. I can sneak in and out with the crowd. But they will know the difference when I'm the first person to genuinely ask about their day. When I make them laugh, lift their spirits, cover their bill, offer a hug, express empathy. That's why it matters. It's desperately rare in our culture and desperately needed. It's about much more than stories. It's about seeing people, knowing they have value, and building habits of connection in a disconnected society. It's countercultural, but it's worth it. People are not interruptions. With that in mind, season 2 comes to a close, but not before giving you a hint into what's next. Stay tuned in January for a new year kickoff. We've got some exciting new things coming in season 3 and can't wait to share them with you. In the meantime, do you know someone who practices story listening really well? Give them a shout out and tag us with the hashtag StoriesOverStigmas. We'll be spotlighting them on our pages. If you'd like to share your story on the blog or be interviewed for the podcast, go to youneverasked.org, share your story. We'd be delighted to hear from you. I hope you've been impacted by this season's storytellers. We're eager to have you back again. Thanks for listening to You Never Asked.